So basically, my dissertation's all about how the transaction between drawn architecture to more technical architecture, and how, if any way, it's people who don't do much drawn architecture these days almost lose creativity or lose the idea of, I spoke to people, a few architects already, and they were saying because you don't spend so much time on a drawing, if you get a drawing wrong, for instance, you look over it and you make sure that every single part of it's correct, because if you don't get it all correct, you've got it all again, a hand draw. Whereas with something like what Emma does, for instance, she can change different areas of a piece of software very, very easily. She can move walls like very easy. I mean, how do you find it?
No, you're absolutely right. And I often think now, it's a pity that I didn't stop and learn to use computer-aided drawing.
But I mean, you didn't have the choice, did you?
Oh no, not originally, but I mean, some years back I did. And I thought, well, no, I mean, I can still beat the computer-aided drawings on some areas.
Yeah.
But
how do you think that this is? Why did you think that, for instance? I mean, why?
Well, only because I've seen
drawn better in some way.
No, there are some advantages with drawing as against computer-aided drawings.
Yeah.
One is that you can actually you can fake with your own drawings. I mean, when I'm putting in a town planning application, well, I don't know. Maybe you could with computer-aided, but I think it's more difficult. But I can put a tree and put leaves and things on a tree in a position to cover up things that I don't want the planning officer to notice.
Yeah.
With computer-aided drawings, they tend to use standard set trees and set people and set cars, which are all programmed already in.
Yeah.
Whereas I can make a car. I can draw a car in the foreground, slightly bigger if I want to lose something, or I can just vary. I've got the opportunity to slightly manipulate the landscape and what's going around it. The building itself also, I can actually, because of years of drawing, I can, with shade and perspective, I can exaggerate things. Now, I'm not saying that you can't do this with computer-aided drawings, but people tend to use the same drawings and the same style. And if you look at a series of town planning applications that have been submitted, you can have 6 schemes from 6 architects all look the same.
Yeah.
Because they've all used similar software.
Exactly.
Whereas with a drawing that's done as I do, and some people that still use pen and ink and so forth, a lot of them have their own particular style.
Yeah.
And when I put my schemes for planning applications into the London Borough of Lewisham, for example, where I do more work, they know if I didn't even sign the drawing or put my name on it, they'd probably have a good guess where it came from the style of the drawing.
Do you find that some people actually solely employ you because they know that what your style is, and they know, oh, okay, this is PeterBrinsom's piece of work, then we know that he's satisfactory to work for us, for instance? Well,
I don't think there's any connection between that and computer-aided drawings, CAD drawings. No,
it's not. I'm not looking at a relation, more a contrast, a difference.
I regret that I didn't actually study CAD drawing earlier, but at my age it was a bit late to start studying a new system, having had 40 years in the business or so.
Yeah.
No, when did I start? 68 when I first started for myself. But I started in an architect's office in 1960. So that's over 50 years ago. Things were obviously very different then. And what I used to do then was work in the design studio. And my forte was the artistic side of presentation. And we had a situation there where sometimes schemes would be produced by the architects in the office, and then a perspective was done so well, the artwork was so good on it, that sold it to the town planners.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, that would be difficult to do with, in my view, computer-aided drawings. Although they can make it look very real now, the artist can give it a really artistic approach.
Yeah. Which is also a selling point.
I could. I mean, we had perspective artists in the 60s that weren't particularly good architects but were brilliant artists.
Yeah.
And they, with a set of drawings that I used to work on plans, they would take my plans and they would produce, and I'd do coloured plans, and we used to do things by hand with colour, and then the perspective artist would develop it even further, and he would show dramatic effects, like maybe he put in the building in a thunderstorm.
Yeah, something you can.
And it really looked good on the town planning application. I'm not saying that they can't do it with a computer, but I would think it's more difficult. But at the end of the day, one of the things that you're obviously interested in. No, I think there are the whole emphasis of architecture actually has changed in the last 40 years, and
I was going to speak about the transition. I mean, did you ever feel that it was quite? Were you worried at all in terms of this sort of technological revolution?
Well, in a way,
in the craft.
What has happened is, you see, when I was younger, the architect was the leader of the team. He designed the scheme and he knew how everything was put together, and he was always the captain, if you like, of the boat. But in more recent years, some architects are just designers, but they don't have anything to do with the construction or the building, really. They have other people to deal with all that. Now, I don't subscribe to that being the proper solution, although I suppose when you look around at some architecture that goes, it may well be that it works, but I would have guessed that Norman Foster does actually understand quite in some depth things like the engineering, not necessarily that he could design it, but he would understand it. But so in early days, I would be in the chair at site meetings, and I would ask the engineer about certain things. Another thing was when I started designing buildings, before I actually finished the design ready for the client's appraisal, I would often have the engineer in and say to him, look, where do I really need to put the beams?
Yeah.
Now today it seems to me, with all these programs, coming back to your point, that the architect thinks, oh, well, that could be sorted out by the engineer later. But really, you need to design a building properly. You need to have a good idea of what's going on before you start. And it's no good saying, well, we'll put a box down, we'll cantilever it over that.
Well, what would actually happen these days would actually, someone would just send the file that they're using on the piece of software to the engineer, and then he works it out there, and vice versa. So you talk.
Yeah, but it's far better to start off as a combined team, really.
Yeah.
The architect's got to be able to capture the client's requirements. You, for example, want a new house. Now, the first thing I've got to find out if I'm working for you is what sort of house do you want to live in? Do you want an ultra modern house with all the gadgets? Do you want loads of glass because you've got fabulous views? Or are you going to have a little intimate house, perhaps within a walled area, because it's not in the country, it's in the middle of town. So you're going to have white walls and put your house in the middle of it with some planting in the garden. So you'd have a completely different approach. So when you've got all that, then you produce some sketches. Now, the one thing that if you're completely relying on computer-aided drawings, it's jolly difficult for you to go to the client and instantly show him a drawing of what he wants. Now, if you're trained to do everything on the drawing board by hand, you can draw a sketch and say, is this what you want, while you're with the client.
Yeah.
Maybe the computer is getting to the point now where you can show him what he wants before you start, but I like to be able to say...
In a way, I know what you mean. I mean, you can only do so much on a computer. Using the piece of software, when you're designing a pre-visualization of a house, generally you need to have drawings to create what you want on the piece of software, for instance.
I think so, yeah.
But that comes later on in the process. If you're almost saying that people are forgetting the first part of the process, which is the basic draw and design. So the person can't relate to what they want until they've got drawings. Do you see where I'm coming from?
Not quite, but I think let's put it down that you wanted a house of your own, you wanted me to design it and build it for you. You tell me what you want while we sit down as we are now. Then I could roughly, with freehand, say to you, you want 5 bedrooms. Do you want an ensuite with each?
Yeah.
Have we got a plot big enough?
And what I'm saying is every architect
Yeah.
should be capable of doing that. Should be able to sketch out something that a client wants. But I
believe
find
that's
some
so.
people now are so focused on, or have been taught, for instance, how so much about the software that they're forgetting about this part of the
Yes,
process.
and I think you probably could be right. But you know, because I've been in it and I'm at an age now where I don't get about as much as I used to meeting other architects. I can't say with my hand on my heart that is so.
But do you reckon there's a reason why you're not seeing other architects because you're one of the only few that still do hand drawn, or do you think?
No, I don't think that is the case.
Don't think that's the case. No.
No, but I would not be working now if I was working on computers. I don't think, because I get an enjoyment out of producing a drawing of what the client wants, and I like to show the client a drawing which I feel is something which is worth looking at.
Right.
The drawing it's got to be drawn so that it impresses the town planners.
And you feel if you weren't in charge,
the planning committee, but if it was all done by software, then it wouldn't be personal.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't feel as involved as I do by actually drawing it myself.
Yeah.
I mean, I draw the door, the window. I put the bin in, the
so
dog
I mean,
in. You know,
in terms of, you'd almost say that the difference between software, technological software, and hand drawn is more about a personal thing. It's more about personal enjoyment, because really the software still does the correct stuff.
I'm not saying it doesn't do the correct thing.
Yeah.
But I worry whether it produces what the client really wants.
Right. Okay.
Or whether the software is used as an excuse, and the architect says this is the best way to do it, and tries to persuade the client to have what he wants because it suits him, rather than I will draw and give you what you want because that's what you want.
Yeah.
You know, there's definitely a conflict between both ways, really, in my view.
Mm. Is there anything you think in terms of education? When you were growing up and you were studying architecture, do you think I mean, obviously you don't really know how people are teaching these days in terms of degrees of architecture, but do you think it's changed a lot?
Yes, I do, because I think it comes back to what I said earlier. There was the architect was recognised in the 60s and the 70s as the team leader. The builders on site recognised when the architect came on site that he was in charge. Today there are project managers, there are engineers. The architect is, and I'm not.
Is it a bad or good thing?
I'm not sure whether it's good or bad, but whether she would be able to, if left on a desert island with a computer only, do all the work necessary to build a house on that island with no one to talk to, I wonder.